There is such thing as like the woke right.
When were you last there at all?
I've never been.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me?
Big time.
Jesus Christ. Woke Right Inc. We have a term for it.
You've never been.
Am I not allowed to talk about it now?
I'm of the elite. You've never been? You've never been there?
By that logic, the journalism class shouldn't exist.
This is a very hot button issue. There are children being directly through the heart. And no, Douglas Murray, I didn't have to go there to fucking know that.
You're not, once again, deporting people for criticizing America. You're deporting people for criticizing a different country.
Yeah, fucking lobbying our Congress on C-SPAN going, you must go to war with Iraq. You must go to war with Iran. Well, we know what happened with the Iraq war, and you're still pushing that. You are creating the new Hamas terrorists. You're creating. Trump is the most pro-Israel president in the history of America. It's not close.
Yeah.
So why is that? All right, gentlemen.
How you doing, dude?
I'm good, man. It's good to see you.
Almost a mil, right?
Almost a mil.
Yeah.
Getting there.
You're a different person from last time.
Yeah, it's been a road, but you know, we've been working hard, and Alessi's working his ass off back here too, and you know, the channel. It is. It's an underdog.
One
show.
day at a time. Definitely not underdog shit.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I know. Calling yourself underdog gives you like juice to keep going, but you're not an underdog.
Yeah, it's but we are.
You got to
because
convince yourself that you're one.
It's not that you have to convince yourself. All you have to do is like go to Flagrant Studios and count the 63 lights in their studios and realize one of them's worth more than you, and you realize, man, we're really operating from behind here. But it's cool to see where it's at, and most importantly, some of the people that have been willing to come here as of late too. It's like pinch yourself kind of stuff. You know, Ed Calderon flying in from wherever the hell in Mexico, like excited to be here too. Great guy, by the way. Amazing dude. You know, guys like that I before I was doing this was watching, and now they're coming here to the studio. It's really special.
One day at a time. From a vibe shift point of view, it has been like so funny to track it during election, post-election, and the talk around vibe shift was obviously that, like mathematically, given the fact that Trump won the popular vote, there is a bigger vibe in play, which is people are more conservative than they used to be, and they're okay with that principle. It actually is in the Overton window. That used to be the narrative during election and post-election night. However, standing today, how would you kind of grade this time after Trump's win?
I just look at history. I always give this speech to people, right? So let's just keep it simple. Look since World War II, okay? You got Truman, Eisenhower.
Mm-hmm.
Kennedy, he got whacked, but they kept Johnson in there.
Got whacked.
Nixon got kicked out, they kept Ford in there. Carter.
Yeah.
Reagan bought an extra 4 years of his intel buddy, fucking George H.W. Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, all the way back to Trump. It's nothing new.
Good old pendulum swing.
Yes, it's a pendulum. This is how society works. People naturally, you want to talk about like the underdog thing. The underdog is always the one that's not in power. And so people will start to lean and try to see things that way for the purposes of seeing things that way. Not everyone, but the percentages of the population are going to do that, especially when that in power is doing things that are objectively stupid. And when you look at the last administration, there were things that were directly in their control that it feels like, it almost to me like it's the greatest argument for there being a uniparty system. It felt like they just fucked it up on purpose, right? Like number one, let's put a guy who's not alive in there, right? Like let's just make sure he's literally incapable of talking. You know, Alessi Alaman may think that that's the best candidate to ever run for office, but he's the only one that thinks that. Obviously, I know you were a huge Biden guy.
Yeah, big guy.
Right.
Big Biden guy.
But let's do that, number one. Number two, let's leave the border wide open. You know, when they walk across, let's be like that guy in the meme when he's wanting people going into the stadium. Just say, come right the fuck in, buddy. Number three, let's quadruple down on woke shit. Let's say there's no such thing as a new pronoun that's not going to be acceptable. Let's tell everyone that, you know what, if your fucking 9-year-old is trans, you say yes, ma'am, or sir, or whatever their preferred fucking title is. You know, and then, by the way, don't even question anything about a vaccine that was created in fucking 9 months, and that, you know, some people may have some studies coming out that aren't necessarily positive about it because, you know what, we love big pharma around here. You see how stupid these stances are, how anti-liberal a lot of those stances are too. They're totalitarian in many ways. These were directly, and I'm missing one in there, also the censorship thing. Yeah, let's text Twitter and tell them what tweets to take down, because that won't be pulled up in discovery in a fucking court case in the future. Like, all you had to do was not do these things. All you had to do was not do these things. And maybe it's a totally different narrative. But they quadrupled down on every single thing I just mentioned right there. And they gave Trump, of all people, this controversial guy, he's always been controversial since he came on the scene. They gave him the moral high ground to get wins that are of the lowest bar and standard ever, that are like, they're wins. The guy walked into office on whatever it was, January 20th, and the second executive order is there are now 2 genders. And people are like, yay! Woo! 2 genders. When did we lose that? That's not a win, but it's a huge, to his credit, it's a huge win because shit got that crazy. So this pendulum swing was strong, and I understand why it happened. Now, am I going to go suck up to power and say I agree with everything he stands for or what he's doing? No, I'm not. I have political disagreements with him. But what I'm not going to do is fucking look at America and say I don't understand why you elected him. I understand exactly why people elected him. And the most reasonable people I know who are not political, meaning they're not firmly on one side or the other, almost all voted for him.
I think there's a bigger point about like coalition building, which is I have friends in tech media, what have you, who were not ever like capital L liberal. They were just like normies.
Right.
And for the longest time...
Like Joe.
For the longest time, there was this aversion to like, looking at a MAGA hat or what have you. That kind of became part of the Overton window. And you would see like people in New York fucking City wearing MAGA hats. And then you would question, okay, what is changing? And I think that's where the conversation begins. However, I don't want to like mull over it because that's almost like 3 fucking months ago. And the news cycle has changed like 5 different times since then. And right now the approval ratings are kind of down for Trump. So to your point, the pendulum swings really, really, really fucking fast. When I first moved to DC almost 10 years ago, it was cool to be like a blue dog Democrat because, Obama was like the cool thing in college and that energy was anti-Bush and coming. And so the point I'm making is that in politics, these things change overnight.
Yes. Joe, we talked about this on the Patreon episode last week, but people watching Sagnik's channel didn't see that. You were going to college in New York in 2016 when he won, right?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, so like I was in like pretty much like a very like liberal woke stronghold for college as far as like where I was. It was a very small art school with the population size of a big high school. And 2016, like the day he got elected, like the city and the school were just in complete disarray, counseling center hours extended. I didn't go to class. Like I leaned in. I'm like, Professor, I'm broken up. The new Battlefield 1 just came out, and I'm really broken up about what happened here today. And they're like, yeah, no, it's an excused absence. Like, that's okay. And, we joke about it now, and I was a silly college kid, but there was a huge point to be made that when it happened in 2016, it was like the world was turned upside down. I mean, the catering hall at my school was a scene. Like, it was bad. Like, people were in full disarray and breakdowns. Like, it was bad. But then this year, or, this election and this win, we were both out the night he won in New York. A couple nights after. It was like the first Friday after the election. And it was a good night. Everything was calm and cool, collected.
I was in D.C. the first time around, Trump circa 2016, it felt like second 9/11.
Right.
Yeah, no.
It legitimately, DC was not prepared for this, unlike this time, which was like, oh yeah, we kind of expected this.
Alessi was actually in Antifa at the time. he was burning down K Street.
Yeah. Oh yeah, K Street. There's many things to burn down in K Street. For those who don't know,
I agree with Antifa on that.
Yeah, K Street.
We don't want to burn things. We don't condone that. By the way,
get to Midtown. Get them to Midtown. Midtown.
For those who don't know, K Street is where the DC consulting class and the lobbies class lives. And yeah, like even those people, dude, like their whole mindset has shifted so much,
Yes.
given the fact that quote unquote big tech literally lives in the city now. Like it's no longer enough for you to lobby to DC by giving them donations or what have you. You
gotta
have
be
to
there.
literally be in the city. The proximity matters, which was pretty obvious during Inauguration Day. The entire entourage.
Yeah, they were proximity of about 5 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Front row.
Yeah, and so was Bezos' wife. What's her name?
What an outfit choice.
What a good God, golly.
Yeah.
The first
Fucking
time in
Latinas,
DC.
man. Can't live with them, can't live without them.
But to that point, you are someone who has, you live online and you've seen things change on Facebook, YouTube, what have you. Don't deny that. You're terminally online. That's what pays the bills.
I'm not
Yeah.
terminally online. Otherwise, I'd have
It's
an
because
Instagram
he
follower.
mentioned he went out to me the other night, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I bet you really needed that. That was probably good. So that's why it struck a heartstring.
The reason I want to talk about the big tech shift because I still remember the days of Facebook when companies were like wiped overnight because Facebook changed their algorithm from going away from news because they really didn't want to touch anything right of center. Compared that to what's happening today, which is Zuckerberg kind of sort of cosplaying right-wing bro by wearing a black shirt and a gold chain. I don't know how much authentic that is or not. I don't want to question it. To your point, what do you think that vibe shift actually is? And do you think that actually manifests into something real? Or is it just like, do these people not believe anything?
I don't know how much they really believe. I do think that there's a common sense element from some of the things that I listed out. Now, some of those same guys were like very strong on, say, the vaccine issue or something like that, and they may quietly be like, maybe we got some things wrong there, and they're not going to talk about that one. But the other stuff, they're like, wait, what were we doing with the border? Like, why did we ever support that and shit like that? Like, this is a common sense thing. It's not even like lock everyone out. It's like, let's have like a little security. Let's know who the fuck's coming in here. It's a common sense issue. So yes, I think even like the technocrats, I'll give them that like they see some common sense things where they're like, all right, maybe we lost our way a little bit. But then there's other things where it's like, yes, they're just riding the winning horse. They're riding the culture shift. They're gonna use that to their advantage. They have to curry favor with the new administration, and they want to try to limit their exposure. That's why fucking Bill Gates was trying to get meetings with, I think he actually did meet with Trump at Mar-a-Lago before Trump assumed office again. And it's like, well, we know Bill Gates ain't a fan of Trump, but like he is a fan of fucking business, and he understands how things work. And I won't even fault him on that. That's what he's supposed to do. But I don't think, like you said, we've already had fucking 5 news cycles since he got in here. And that's being conservative. There's been more than that. Things change very quickly, and also people can get caught up in the moment. And we were talking about before you got here while we were all recording the Patreon episode, talking about this Douglas Murray, Dave Smith back and forth that happened with Joe Rogan yesterday. It's like, there is such thing as like the woke right.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me?
Big time.
Jesus Christ. Woke right Inc. We have a term for it.
You have a term for it.
Yeah.
Who invented it?
I don't care who invented it, but it pisses me off. Like
India wins again. Damn it.
you brought that up, and I don't know, like from the like I'm an immigrant and I know Douglas is from the UK. As a
we all
fundamental rule, it pisses me off that he's coming here and questioning your ability, all things free speech. It's like, why are you talking about it if you haven't been to Israel? By that logic, the journalism class shouldn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
Like, what is that
100%.
logic?
100%.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even talking about Israel, Palestine, anything specific.
Just
like
what's
that
the logic?
logic in itself is just so. That's actually British logic. I know that logic because I went to school. I know that logic. It's like, you actually have to go there and you have to talk to the people.
Eton? You didn't go to Eton.
And it's like, okay, you're not a time traveler. You can at least travel. And it's like, relax. Like that's not how like discourse, journalism, news like works. You do your research. You let people know what you think about it, and if people like it, they go with it. If they don't like it, they'll let you know, and we back and forth with debate.
Yes. And I think beyond that, though, what he really blew it with is he had a chance to bring up more what I'm getting at. Like you have on one hand, you have that elitism class that exists across the spectrum, right? And Douglas Murray outed himself if he wasn't
He's
outed
part of
already
one.
as clearly in that class, regardless of, in his case, he's more of a conservative guy or whatever.
Quick point
Yeah.
there. Just being part of that is not a pejorative.
What do you mean?
Like being part of the elite automatically is not a minus point for me. However,
Okay,
if you use that point as a cudgel
Yes.
against people like
Agreed.
Dave Smith or like, let's call it the alternate media, what have you, then I have a problem with you.
Agreed. So you're not labeling people on just the circumstances of the environment they're from. You're labeling people on how they behave when they're put into an environment where that can be something or not.
Correct.
Yeah, I like that. I agree 100%. He obviously was a part of the camp that said, I'm of the elite. You've never been? You've never been there? You know, he was so like, it was like a dramatic play watching him go at Dave Smith with that. And Dave's just a normal fucking dude. And Douglas he almost can't compete with that. But what Douglas was bringing up when he was defining the woke right was you have people who now got so pissed at the left that they're questioning and things that happen with establishments and things like that, righteously so, where now they're questioning everything that ever happened and they're using like a confirmation bias to go to the worst boogeyman of everything. And what sucks is that Douglas went about this in the most condescending fucking way that he completely blew a great opportunity that, by the way, Dave Smith and Joe Rogan probably would have agreed with him on some of those issues. Maybe not all of it, but they might have even been like, wow, actually, yeah, no, there is something to be said there. But he had to walk in there and say, oh, I'm the king of this court now. And unfortunately, he whiffed. And so now things like that will continue to fester and people will take their meaning of life and define it on, you know, their favorite tweeters online, and these tweeters say these things that are objectively crazy, and they'll throw things out that are like evidence that aren't really evidence, but then it spreads really fast because 280 characters has the ability to do that because no one's reading the fucking thread.
Let me use the woke right point to segue to immigration and what's happening right now.
Okay.
I was totally in favor when Trump is like, I mean, I live fucking 5 minutes away from the Roosevelt Hotel, so I know what the fuck is going on across America.
Tell people what that is.
Roosevelt Hotel in New York City is a place where they house illegal immigrants. And if you do not live in New York City, what's going on in the city is you cannot get on the train without seeing some illegal lady who I have 100% sympathy for because she's trying to do the best with her kid on her back in like a satchel situation, and she's selling like Orbit or what have you. Yeah. So that has been going on for 2-3 years.
Yeah, Joe's buying it.
But like, you see something like that and you're like, okay, something's got to break. And Trump comes in, he talks about this. We got to deport people who came here illegally, crimes, what have you. However, you are starting with fucking students in Colombia who are writing essays, not criticizing America, criticizing a different country.
Yes.
How is that? Like, how is that on the priority list?
It's crazy. It's and unfortunately, we were also talking about this, but it's like, my second biggest disappointment with that podcast was that it wasn't 6 hours because they were just getting warmed up at 3.
Oh, yeah.
And they did not get to discuss these things.
No, they're debating about authority. That pisses me off.
They didn't get to discuss any of the intelligence aspects and intelligence wars that go on. There's certainly a huge topic that everyone in that room is versed in. And they didn't get a chance to discuss what a boomerang opposite effect what you just mentioned has on society.
Yeah.
When society sees, you know, you being labeled the minute you give, in some cases, a very righteous criticism of another country, let alone your own, in what's supposed to be a free speech society, and that's being legislated, you are now going to create more of those protests that you see at Columbia University and stuff like that. You are going to create the unreasonable people to come out of the woodwork with a reasonable complaint. And I've seen this over and over again. It has the opposite effect. When you put Tom Brady and Snoop Dogg on a fucking Super Bowl commercial to yell about this issue, it's a Streisand. It's a similar idea to like the Streisand effect. Like, okay, you're telling everyone to stop being anti-Semitic. 99% of the people watching this have never had that thought.
That has the same effect, which was the BLM lecturing effect.
Took the words out of my mouth.
And that is problematic because, again, like, you want to talk about free speech. Once again, does it piss me off that kids in school burn flags, what have you? Yes. Is it okay for them to do that given all things First Amendment America? 100% yes. And on top of that, you layer, you're not, once again, deporting people for criticizing America. You're deporting people for criticizing a different country.
Yes.
What is that
Yeah.
precedent? Why are you taking like orders from a lobbyist group for a different country? You're literally bending over backwards.
And this is where I think we do have to look inward. Actually, this is this is an unpopular opinion, but I've given it a bunch. Everyone yells about AIPAC and everything, and I hear you. And we're talking about the American Israel Political Action Conference, which does lobby a lot of people on behalf of the country. AIPAC exists to lobby on behalf of a country of whatever it is, 10 million people, to try, where they have a lot of countries around them who don't like them, right? To try to lobby for their interests. They're doing exactly what I would do in their position, and they're using our system to be able to do it. My problem is that we have not changed that system in America to not allow other countries, regardless of who they are, to interfere with our politics. We have to have a serious conversation about why have we not done legislation? And immediately people will say because AIPAC's paying everyone and they'll fucking get him out of office if they vote against this. I don't think that's actually true anymore. I think we've seen, for example, like Thomas Massey's come out and been insanely against AIPAC in Israel. They pumped whatever it was. I don't want to give a number, but it was millions of dollars into a campaign against him. And his numbers went up, right? I'm not saying that's going to happen across the board, but like we need to have a serious conversation about why we let that kind of thing happen here, because they're going to keep doing that to try to protect the interests of their country. That's exactly what I would do.
Let's stay on that. Let's expand on that. Why? I'm asking you.
Why they do that?
Yeah. Just as like a refresher for people who like don't really give a shit about AIPAC and how lobbying works.
Yeah. So let me start off by saying this, because unfortunately you have to qualify things these days. Otherwise people will just hear everything all one way or another. I don't like Benjamin Netanyahu. I do not like Smotrich. Obviously, the other fucking dude, why is his name eluding me right now? I talk about him all the time. Ben Gvir is not in the government anymore. That's recent. But guys like that are fucking scumbags. So, I have a severe problem with the current Israeli government. I do think there are certainly at least aspects of what you could call a genocide going on in Gaza at this point. And I think that's terrible. I also think terror groups are bad. I think Hamas, I have no problem with those guys getting wiped off the face of the earth. I just don't like seeing a bunch of kids go with it too. So all that aside, the reason Israel feels the need to have to do that, where I will empathize with them, is the fact that it is true since their founding, which was controversial in 1948, that many people in that area of the world don't want them to exist. Now, they don't necessarily help their situation when they perpetuate those feelings by doing things, I don't know, preemptively and, certainly brazenly in the region to foment dislike for generations to come. That said, I understand that they do live in a constant state of danger. Therefore, when you have a friend as big and bad and powerful as the United States, where, by the way, some of the people who are the same ethnicity that live in your country live here and have some sway too, yeah, you're going to go use that. And when that democratic system has a loophole that allows people from another country to come in literally openly with the interests of that country to pay politicians and help get them into office in exchange for them clearly doing what you want to do, that's going to be forwarding the interests of your country, of course they're going to do that. So I get where they're coming from. I empathize with that position. Now, looking at it as an American, because this is my country over here, no disrespect to them. I don't want to see people bomb them off the face of the earth or anything. But there are things that are happening in them lobbying our Congress that are then taking votes to the floor and having decisions happen in this country that are not in our best interests. I, for one, do not want to go to war with Iran. I don't think Iran's good at all. I would love to see that regime get toppled. But like starting a war with them when they're in deals with Russia and China, and you now have a whole like East-West thing going on, the fucking downside of that far outweighs the upside of a few guys who yell fucking too loud about death to America and whatever.
Especially during a trade war.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's like, by the way, we did a mission in early 2020, January 2020, and took out Soleimani. Now, from guys I talked to back then, there were people, Trump made that decision, and there were a lot of people around him like, what the fuck are you doing? Because they're like, yeah, we don't like this guy. He's terrible. He should be taken out. But like, are you fucking kidding me? This is borderline an act of war. What did Iran do about it? Nothing.
Nothing.
They did fucking nothing. They blinked. They realized we can't do anything about it. Right? So when you are Israel now and you are trying to, and they've been doing this for years, they've been dating back to the 90s, they've been trying to get the U.S. to go to war with Iran. You can run the tape in 2002 of Netanyahu fucking lobbying our Congress on C-SPAN going, you must go to war with Iraq, you must go to war with Iran. They are an enemy to America who we are your best friend. It's like, well, we know what happened with the Iraq war. What about the other half of that? And you're still pushing that 21, 22 years later? Like, I'm going to have a couple people in here that are of Iranian origin to talk about this. And I really do want to understand, like, what the thought process is there. But if there's a way to avoid war, I want to do that. And when another country may be interfering with that, I don't give a fuck who they are. I don't like that. And I don't want to see that.
Why do you think this whole quote-unquote loophole, like, why do you think Israel is the only country which gets to quote-unquote exploit it?
It's a great question.
Because America does
think about this a lot.
have like familial ties with a lot of other countries across the world. However, this level of quote unquote symbiotic government doesn't exist anywhere else.
I think so. The places I would think of the most for you would think they would have a ton of sway would be Britain, Canada, and Australia.
Yeah.
And the most obvious logic there is that, I'm not even including New Zealand here, but you can include them
These are
too.
part of G7
It's
countries.
like,
makes
yes,
sense.
and they're English-speaking countries. Canada's right on our border. We never been at war with them. We get along with them and everything. It's like you would think that they would have a lot of influence. Now, they do have influence in other ways. They don't necessarily have lobbying organizations.
Correct.
But there are things you and I both...
trade, yeah.
Yeah, you and I both know there's a lot of deals that happen behind the scenes and stuff like that taxpayers don't see. That said, I think a big part of it is that Israel, from their creation, was aggressive about this because of the time in which they were created as well and the controversy around which they were created, where they were created, on the holiest land of all, where there were people who are displaced technically, literally, from where they live, right? So I think that they got in there up front, and they also, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but there was a generated sympathy due to what happened in World War II to the Jewish people, which actually can be a separate kind of thing necessarily from like some of the people, say, who lived in Palestine, but it's a part of their same ethnicity.
Yeah.
And family members of theirs were wiped off the earth or tried to be fully exterminated off the earth, and millions of them died. So there was a worldwide understanding of that for a while, and I think they used that to kind of backdoor something like this and set up something like AIPAC where our system allows them to do that, where other countries may not have had to be that deliberate about it. You know, Britain's an empire. They're not worried about not existing tomorrow. Yeah, they're worried about losing some of their empire over the years, but like in the 19th, they're fine, right? Israel at the time is maybe, don't quote me on this, maybe at the time they have like a 5 million population. In the 60s, they're 20 years removed from almost being exterminated off the earth. Like, there's a fucking desperation there. So we're going to set up AIPAC. We're going to do this shit. And yeah, then the obvious point is that where they need to be respected on their skill is that they do have the best spy operations in the world. And you could say they probably have had that since for decades at least. And they are very, very adept and very brazen at being able to get their way in the espionage underworld. And we have had a lot of people of different perspectives, let's say, who come from our intelligence community who have been in my studio, and whether it's on camera or off camera, say the same things about it and talk about how much Israel was brazen about that. And they didn't like that. The intelligence community of, you know, say Mossad, and it's more than Mossad. There are other organizations there too, but, you know, it's the easy one to talk about. And like CIA didn't get along. As far as I know, they don't really get along. And that's interesting.
Coming back to immigration and the woke right aspect of it, all of this started post October 7th. Everything that was going on in the colleges of the states, and people like Bill Ackman were like, anyone and everyone who is part of this protest and is part of a American taxpayer-funded university need to be ID'd, and there needs to be consequence of it.
Yes.
And what is happening today is a 6th, 7th order consequence of that. How do you think we should, if you're thinking about like everything from a free speech point of view, because the problem of labeling kids who have visas in schools and are partaking in Palestine protests, what have you, and labeling them as domestic terrorists or what have you, if you do that, then you have to extend that logic to American citizens who are also partaking with that. And that's where the free speech debate comes into play, because then you're just using the domestic terrorist like label to deport people who you do not like or whose views you don't like. How do you think we should actually think about free speech and domestic terrorism in this context?
Well, we also shouldn't immediately market everyone that we decide we don't like, that we're going to deport, as a Hamas supporter. Let's just start right there, because there are people who that's not even what they believe, or at the very least what they're leading with. They're more like Free Palestine. And I understand that this is a very hot button issue. There are children being shot directly through the heart over there right now by sniper rifles. This is a real thing. And no, Douglas Murray, I didn't have to go there to fucking know that. You want to pull up all the evidence and have this conversation. Like, yes, do I think Douglas Murray makes a fair point about the fact that we seem to just take whatever the Gaza Health Ministry says as the numbers of what's happening? Yes, that's a fair point, because there is some interference with Hamas, certainly within that. But does that mean it's not happening? Does that mean that like it's okay that all these people are fucking dying coming up on 2 years after October 7th, when Hamas's organizational structure has long been decimated? It's not completely gone. I'll give Israel that. Like, there's still some around, but like, you are creating the new Hamas terrorists. You're creating them. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And to go back to your question of like what to do here, you know, God, it's so strange, because a lot of Trump's base is really not fucking with Israel right now.
Especially younger people.
Yeah.
Like people are like, oh, like most Republicans are pro-Israel. What I was like, have you talked to anyone?
The
under
ones
40?
holding public office are.
Yeah, like the authority-wise, yeah. Like, but from a thermostatic politics point of view, if you like survey most people who are on the right, even under the age of 40, they're like, like maybe this is like not our thing.
It's where you have the Bloods and Crips meme for the left and right.
Yeah.
People are like, yeah, we agree on this one. Like, this is getting a little fucking crazy. And yet there's this cognitive dissonance with the right, with not all the people on the right, but with many people on the right, where they just conveniently ignore that Trump is the most pro-Israel president in the history of America.
Ever.
And this is really saying something. It's not close.
Yeah.
It's not close. So why is that? You know? And I would have loved to see them discuss that more on that podcast, because that is one place that I would have loved to see Douglas Murray's answers, or trying to write away things as conspiracy theories or whatever, that clearly there's more to them than just it being some fucking theory. You know, the reality is, in this world, and this is how it is, this isn't just Israel, it's everyone. There are some nasty things that happen in the underworld that involve espionage across spy organizations. If you think that your favorite, or I don't know if that's even a fucking thing, but your fucking country's spy organization is not doing some fucked up things, then you're not living in reality, because there's weird moral questions that they decide to answer in 1 second underground, where they just weigh what's worse, and they go with the one that's least worse. But yeah, are there things that, you know, have involved Israel that could be used to curry favor across Democratic and Republican politicians that, you know, could have just gotten caught up in that? Absolutely. And the fact that that's not a conversation that's ever been had is crazy, because we have it about every other country. We talk about that about every other country. People are talking about Chinese spies all the time. People love talking about Russia spies and the KGB. Yeah. You'd think they fucking did everything that ever happened. But people talk about Britain and some of the things that have happened in history there, where they spy on us too. So why don't you talk about it with Israel? It's a very, very fair question. And like, you know, we're going to have some people in here from both sides of the issue coming up that I'm excited to talk with. And when it comes to the people who are pro-Israel, that will be probably their sticking point. I got to go with the people that are more anti-Israel. I'm going to have to ask them about the realities of like Israel having their existence threatened, because there are so many people around there that don't like them. Mm-hmm. And they should be, they you know, they overuse the fuck out of this line, like Israel has a right to defend themselves. They say that about anything. But there are scenarios where they do have a right to defend themselves because there are real things that happen. Like they did have a right to respond to October 7th.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%.
You know? But like, where do you take that? You know,
Yeah.
if I'm going to criticize, this is what's crazy. If I'm going to criticize my government about how we handled Iraq, my own government, right? I don't fuck with Dick Cheney and George Bush. I wouldn't want to be associated with them. Then I can absolutely criticize another government that's doing that. Like who? I think Kyriaka was in here explaining Netanyahu's never even won with a plurality. There's so many fucking parties over there. He wins with 27%.
Highly unpopular in his own country.
So how many people in the country even support what's going on? A lot of them don't. They all want to exist. They don't want to be bombed. They may be like, we need to limit maybe some Palestinians coming into our borders because we're paranoid about it. As a human being, I understand that. It's not ideal, but I get that. There's a huge difference between that, though, and saying, let's just fucking kill everybody. And I don't know why. I don't know why the average people who have a clear opinion where they're pro-Israel can at least see that part. Because by the way, I am pro-Israel existing.
Yeah.
I'm pro-Palestine existing though too. You can't say that. So as far as the pro-Israel people go, I'm a fucking anti-Semite because I believe in a two-state solution. But, you know, and then the Palestinian people will be like, so you think that desecration of a state should even exist? I'm like, you can't win here.
Let's bring it back to these United States of America. Deef
was getting pissed with all the Israel talk.
I was post Trump when I was curious about what the capital D Democratic Party's response will be, and for the first time I was actually excited after I don't know if you saw the book Abundance by Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson.
I heard it. I didn't read it.
So the thesis is basically Democrats need to quote unquote build more. So for the longest time, Democrats have been obsessed not with outcomes, but how much you raise by talking about those outcomes. Hey, we raised $10 million for public housing, but instead of talking about how many houses did actually get built by going around regulations and what have you. Why is California the place where the high-speed railway is still not built after raising God knows how much money because no one ever got around the environmental regulations and what have you?
Is that true, Alessi?
Facts.
You're a Californian.
Yeah, it's been like going on since 2004 or something. They keep saying there's gonna be a high-speed rail, and then every 4 years Newsom's like, we need more funding. We need a little bit more funding. We're not quite there yet. It's on the way, and it's like, dude, it's been like 20 years.
Yes.
Where is this?
And it's funny because Alessi was ahead of the California Young Democrats for Newsom.
Rock the fuck on.
and now what he put in there, he's done this. So I don't know how you feel about that.
Well,
I mean, he's my favorite governor, but you know.
To be fair, he did raise the money, and if you've seen, a new podcast is on the scene. So that money went into good hands.
To talk to Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk, yes.
Oh, God.
But I was actually excited because people like Ezra and Derek, they actually do influence how DC liberals think.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, for the first time, they're actually thinking about the fact that you haven't actually built jack shit. And the irony is places like Texas and Austin, where YIMBYism is actually thriving and people are building houses, people are talking about sustainable energy and actually acting out progressive environmental policies, what have you.
Right.
Where California and New York, housing is in crisis, environmental problems are in crisis,
Right.
what have you. So my question to you is, do you see that energy of wanting to build more in America? And I want to talk about it because I think that is the solution to a lot of our generation's problem, which is not being able to afford houses, college debt, what have you. We need to build more to actually let people live better lives. Who do you think should own that energy of wanting to build more so people can just live happy lives?
What do you mean? Who do I think should own it?
So leading up to the election, the right had this energy of Martin Reason effective accelerationism, which basically means that we need to move tech forward so we can once again go back to the quote-unquote roaring 20s energy of building stuff in America so that jobs move here. So that is the energy which wants to actually take care of American manufacturism. So that's one energy. And post-election, there's this Abundance book which talks about liberals let go of housing, energy, and popular concepts which were supposed to be the progressive helm. So, and I want
I understand what you're
so
saying.
so the reason I want to stick on this, because I think our generation's problem are not actually rooted in bullshit culture wars. We like to talk about it because it's the easier topics and gets clicks, what have you. No shade there. However, I think we as a country just need to build the fuck more.
I couldn't agree more, and I think there's aspects of both of those lanes that they're looking at.
Yeah.
That you mentioned on the right side and the left side that should come together like the Power Rangers and be the thing. I think you got to look at it from every lens, like for, what's the future of America you want kids to live in? Okay, how can we make that the best possible environment, sustainable, the whole bit, and do that without cutting people's fucking nuts off? And how can we build in general? Why does our infrastructure in very nice places of this country even suck? Why does it suck in places that shouldn't even exist in this country because we've allowed things to get that bad for people? That's like an embarrassment to us. Let's look at the infrastructure of our education system too. Do I think like eliminating the Department of Education is a great idea? Probably not. I feel like there has to be some sort of standard there. But do I understand where they threw the baby out with the bathwater on that and why? Right now that's kind of the reaction where they're trying to like eradicate it. Yeah, I see where that comes from. But like, let's invest in the education of our kids. I did agree. I haven't heard him talk about this in a while, but like when Trump in 2016 was talking about school choice coming in there, I agree with that 100%. It's called a competitive environment so that you have our next generations being taught by people who are competing to teach them at the highest level. So you can have things like public charter schools and stuff like that. I love that. I think that's amazing. Like we got to look at the bare bones of what we do. And everyone likes to exaggerate and go all the way down the conspiracy rabbit hole of like how, I think beyond where it actually is, of like how all these things were created. Oh, it's the Rockefellers and shit like this. I'm not saying stuff like that doesn't exist and, certain powerful people had sway over creating bad systems. I know some of that stuff happens. But like there are some good baselines to work with to how we educate. We just have to adjust them and make it fun. Like when I was a kid, I was musically inclined. And to my mom's credit, she really like invested that and got me like piano lessons and stuff. It's not my mom's fault at all. It's also not the fault of like the teacher. But, I saw this fucking 80-year-old lady who was 2 days away from death who beat into me fucking Scherzo number 9. All right. I can still go out there and fucking, I'll play it for you right now. It's still in there for me. But I gave up on piano because the system that was, and this isn't even school, it's just a smaller example. The system that was being taught was in a creative pursuit that you should love. And I was being taught how to be creative and what creativity I could go to and what I couldn't. If she had taught me how to play All the Lights by Kanye West, I'd be a fucking Beethoven today. Because that's what I would have wanted to do. So when you look at schools and we tell people, fucking stand when I say this, raise your hand when I say that. You sit here and 4 people sit behind you. And by the way, we're going to break in 45 minutes and we're going to move from math to fucking literature. And we're going to do this lesson that the textbook says because that's what the fucking curriculum said from on high. This is too robotic of a system. It's making kids view it as a chore and a task.
It's not even you saying, by the way, the school system was built to actually produce factory line workers.
Yes,
Right.
yes. And that's where, like, when I talk about, like, some of those...
Because that's what the country needed back then.
Some of those conspiracy ideas, that's where there is absolutely great evidence there, and I agree with it.
Yeah.
I'm saying I think people go too far with it sometimes, but absolutely, there's phenomenal evidence that it was created that way. It's like, if you could make it, I'm not saying like let the fucking kids run the whole place and whatever you want, Timmy. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying there has to be a yin and a yang where learning and exploring is made fun. And I always cite this, and it sucks to cite it. Like, fuck the CCP. I don't like them, and I think communism is very bad. One place where they get to take advantage of the fact that they have control, where it's unfortunately a positive, is when you contrast their kids' TikTok with ours.
Oh, yeah.
Our TikTok, which is run by, their fucking company, is a bunch of titty videos, and kids are on it all night and melting their fucking brains watching nonsense. Theirs turns off at 9 o'clock at night or whatever it is for their kids, and they're watching cool nature videos and science videos and fucking math videos. And we already know they're already good at math. They're predisposed to that because of the way their number system is. That's actually a real thing in Malcolm Gladwell's book. That's why, like, in China, the math is so impressive. It's like they're getting these positive kind of things given to them in like kind of a more fun way. You know what I mean? So why don't we take a page out of that book without limiting speech, obviously? But like, how do you make kids want to enjoy science more? You know, I love that kids also want to become YouTubers and stuff too. I am one. That's great. We also need scientists. We also need doctors. We also need lawyers. But like, the world has changed and expectations have changed, and how people enjoy things have changed, and what their expectations on finding their happiness have changed, and that's no different for kids. So why don't we work with that baseline too?
Is there any way I can show you a video?
Yeah.
Can we
Unless you can pull it
I
up.
put up like Ezra Klein abundance New York Times on YouTube? I genuinely want to see your reaction to this.
Ezra Klein. What's it?
Abundance New York Times.
All right, skip
Democrats have a problem that runs deeper than the 2024 election. They have a problem that runs deeper than Elon Musk's assault on the government. Look at the places they govern. Strongholds like New York and Illinois and where I'm from, California. They're losing people.
Since the pandemic started, California is seeing an exodus, a mass exodus.
In 2023, California saw a net loss of 268,000 residents. In New York, 179,000.
New York City is losing some folks, right? Some residents. But it turns out that New York City
Losing some folks.
is also seeing the
Good old
population
localese, man.
drop.
Love
And
it.
in Illinois,
Illinois residents have been fleeing the state at an alarming rate. The state's population has
Yeah, they're
been
running from
declining
that
for the
fucking guy.
10th year in a row.
why are these people leaving? In surveys, the dominant reason is simply this. The cost of living is too high. It is too expensive to get childcare.
It's almost like paying another mortgage.
It is too expensive.
Remember the guy who was like, the rent is too damn high.
Oh my god.
Payment on a $2 million home with 2 kids surviving.
You end up having to live too far from your work. And so they're going to places where all of that is cheaper.
Every day someone is moving to the Florida area.
She got an apartment 3 times the size of the one she had in Manhattan. Plus, there's a wraparound debt.
Yeah.
I can definitely understand.
Go get that 4-bedroom, 3-bath house I had in Texas.
Yeah.
I know these families. These families are my friends. I've lived with them in these places, and I've watched many of them move away from the place they love, the city they wanted to raise their children, because they could not afford to live there. You cannot be the party of working families when the places you govern are places working families cannot afford to live.
Facts.
You are not the party of working families when the places you govern are places working families cannot afford to live.
All right, let's pause
Okay,
it
let's
right
pause
there.
that.
so we can-
Yeah.
The reason I got super excited about this, because for in the last better half of the decade, the first time I got a cogent liberal argument which was not based on Orange Men Bad and talking about like things which actually matter. And I think I still would like to call myself a classical liberal. And this argument resonates with me so much because beyond our YouTuber, news, journalism, tech, media circles, people not being able to afford jack shit is their biggest issue.
Yes.
In actual, in literally America, all over the country. And this was good because for the first time, you are asking the right questions.
Yeah, I what's the old quote? People vote with their wallets.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how many times do politicians need to learn that lesson? You know, and that's what happened. Because also, by the way, those things like tripling down on wokeism and stuff like that, that was costing money.
Oh, yeah.
It's costing money at corporations. It was costing people opportunities at jobs even sometimes because they're so busy spending money on administrative tasks. It was rising university costs to buy a bunch of administrators of this fucking diversity and inclusion and whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's across the board. So everything comes downstream from culture, and that includes the money that goes into your pocket. And so, you know, it's refreshing.
It was so refreshing
to hear Ezra Klein talk about the fucking 500-pound elephant in the room, which the way he put that, this guy is a liberal commentator, and the way he put that is, I know these people. I know what they actually believe when it comes to some sensible issues that liberals may be able to coalesce around. But at the end of the day, they've had to make decisions that are best for their family because they have to be able to put food on the table and be happy in their life. And I understand why they're moving from, say, New York to Texas. And you and I, everyone in here, we all know people who have done these things. And it makes sense. I understand why they're doing it.
With this context, I'm generally curious about your view on like the California railway situation.
Okay.
And the default talking point of people not being able to build more in California is because of policies like EPA and Environmental Act and what have you. And the caveat there is that back when those were actually in effect, which is like the 1970s, even though the idea of like protecting the environment, EPA, was like a Nixon idea, liberals actually led with it and made the environment better because you can ask I'm guessing your dad or mom who lived in California back in that day, you would see like a cloud and you would question, is it like a smog or is this like an actual cloud?
Chemtrails.
And that they actually fixed that. So like there was actually reason for that. However, now there's a hangover of that era and people are still used to those liberal like bureaucratic policies and people can't build jack shit. I'm just curious about your lived experience.
Yeah, well, I come from the most woke area there is there in Santa Cruz.
Oh, nice.
And like Berkeley,
cocaine capital.
Surfer town, baby.
Yeah,
cocaine capital.
exactly.
Surf town,
So, I see the entire spectrum from that area specifically. It doesn't even matter, I would say, even the rail system or things like that. Like the ideas of what they have been already implanted so hard where it's like environment, climate change, women's body, women's right, all those things are such a dominant narrative that it's like, okay, the railroad's not here. All right, no worries. We'll give it a few more years. Like that's how they feel. But if you get more of the sensible liberals, the traditional, which I think you identify as, I think a lot of the people there, for them is they see it as, I don't know, like a lot of people in California, like I love to identify as being like, we're different. Like we're the hippies, we're the people that, we're countercultural, and they love to kind of riff off that. And that's kind of their identity. But like for me, I grew up in a conservative household, so I was kind of like, the black sheep, but I would go to school and like everyone there was extremely one way or they were liberal and I'd always hear it, but it never was like now today, like the concern of the railroad, it's not like a concern. Even though for me, like I've always had the feeling like I want that. I want to be able to go from San Francisco to LA in an hour versus having to drive 4 hours or whatever it is and seeing the tax dollars being waste. And even when they saw Newsom as a new home in San Francisco Marin Headlands for $9 million, like for whatever reason, there's this thing where they don't question what is going on there. Where it's like they're okay with being ignorance is bliss because Newsom will keep doing this thingy and telling you all the nice things you want to hear, and like they're okay with that. It's so weird. Like you don't really hear a lot of Newsom hate. Like people love him there. They think he's one of them. And he is. But it's like it's crazy.
He's also like such a smart politician.
Oh,
like,
he is.
He's so conniving.
Yeah. Oh, he's
and
the best.
You gotta respect that. Like he's playing the game. And I was like, people left California. People can't afford jack shit. Your entire state is literally burning. And your first guest is Charlie Kirk, and you're talking about pronouns and women's sport. Like what?
That's right. He's got to make that pivot, baby.
I was like, you're playing the culture wars game while literally all of this is going on. And people won't criticize you, by the way. Like the normies won't criticize you because like that's a talking point now. And you're playing the culture game because like, oh, like the left needs to get a new Joe Rogan, and like the left needs to play the culture war game, and he's playing the culture war game instead of being a fucking governor.
That's right.
People applauded him though.
They did.
Because they said he's doing what Ezra's doing. They're like, well, look at him now. He's starting to look inward. He's starting to have on these, controversial figures that the other liberals will be like, how could you do that? But he's like, no, we got to fix this party.
That's right.
But you also got to fix your state.
I'm saying, and I'm with you. I don't think he's doing it with good intentions, but he's playing into the game.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, hey, look at this guy. He's going to fix the party.
And I've been hearing this for 20 years for he's been in office. And it's like, to me now, when I saw he was trying to be more midline, where I'm like, he's totally ramping up for a 2028 presidential bid. Like it totally seems like that because so many of these extreme ideas, like he'd go on, like he was in downtown Santa Cruz and he's with, all the LGBTQT, all the woke stuff. He's like pushing it. He's like, yeah, women's sports, men should be in there. Like I saw it and I witnessed it and I was like, wow, this is kind of wild. But now when he took that point with Charlie Kirk, it's like, oh, I see what he's doing. He's He's trying to flip right now where he's like, I'm trying to be more midline because, I can get some of the audience where it's like, yeah, I'm common sense, but also I want to protect these people. So, like, to me, that's what it screams. I'm like, he's just being a politician. He's being the slimy politician.
With that in mind, like, given the fact the right is where it is at and the leading candidate of the Democratic Party will probably arguably be someone like Newsom, I think there's, like, such a white space for a a progressive Tea Party right now, which is, I think, what Bernie and AOC, their whole anti-oligarchy campaign is going on right now. And I was thinking, but this is like such an apt time. I'm not saying I'm for that or against that, but just from like a political consulting point of view, there's like such a window for a liberal Tea Party to just attack.
Let me just toss this line out there. You and I know what I'm going to say.
Yeah,
you and I discussed this the other day. This is an early little...
Go on then, yeah.
Early little theory. My confidence interval is somewhere between like 5 and 8%. Okay, so I'm not fully confident yet, but the Democratic Party doesn't have a face. Gavin Newsom's going to try to be it, and yes, he's a very shameless, entertaining politician, but I don't think he's going to be able to pull that off and overcome the blatant flip-flop floopering that he's done, and the fact that his state actually has not performed very well. I think he would just get too hurt on a political campaign trail for that. And I'm not saying this will happen by 2028, but I think there's a chance that someone like Candace Owens within a decade will be a leader of the Democratic Party. I do.
Do expand. Yeah.
Well, the right has lost her.
Yeah.
She has not outright said that because she still expresses.
The right has lost her. What do you mean? I mean, I know there's Israel and all that stuff, but what do you mean by the right?
That's the turning point for her.
Turning point.
Because she saw, pun intended. She saw the writing on the wall with that, and she saw the fact that, now the same people who would have been behind, like, yeah, let's bomb all these fucking people after 9/11, she's empathizing with the people who got bombed. And there's a lot of that I also empathize with as well, because it's like, think about how much we demonize like all people of a Muslim background of an Islamic background after 9/11. Like, it's kind of crazy what we did there, and it was just widely accepted at the time. And she's questioning stuff like that, and Candace still. And by the way, I'm saying all this as someone who, if we're going to be very fair here, has always openly not been a fan of her. I don't need to get into all that right now, but I've criticized her a lot since episode 10 of my show, to be honest, with Terrence Jones. Like, I have a lot of issues with Candace Owens. I listen to what everyone's saying, especially people that have a lot of sway like her, because I like to read the tea leaves in society. But when you're talking about someone who got into the Republican Party on the basis of the no-nonsense, middle-class, bring back America stuff that Donald Trump was bringing into the fold in 2016, 2017, 2018 when she got on board, we are more looking at the things that were traditional liberal ideas. Liberals used to talk to the people in the middle of America who worked in the blue collar jobs and stuff. It wasn't the Republicans who did that.
The Clinton Democrat.
Right, exactly. And so I think the boomerang, it won't be the same. Like, there's a lot of differences between what the Clinton Democrats were as far as like from a corruption standpoint, elitist standpoint, certain alliances standpoint that like Candace Owens would never get behind. But the boomerang of politics, I think, will bring her back, and it will not bring her back, but it'll put her in a position where there is it already exists. There's a giant vacuum right now on the left side. There's no leader. There's no leadership. I'm not saying this would happen tomorrow. That's why my confidence interval is still low on this. This is an early ember of a theory I'm seeing play out, because no one is coming forward who can do things that actually talk to the everyman. And Candace Owens does. And she has one issue that is a strong issue on the left, which is that she doesn't fuck with Israel. And the left loves that. And that's a huge...
Pause. I don't think the left loves that. I don't think progressives...
Oh, they do. Oh, I'm going to disagree.
Define
there.
The left. Like, are you talking about
the voting bloc of the left doesn't fuck with Israel. Go look at the numbers. We already talked about the right. They're losing. Israel's losing everyone.
My biggest pushback is that she would never fucking get through. Like, DNC has no primaries. So how the fuck will she get into any of that system?
I think that, again, this is why my confidence interval is still lower on this, because I've always said this. The RNC is stupid. The DNC is corrupt. They're both corrupt, but like the DNC knows how to rig whatever the fuck they got to rig. And we've seen that over and over again. I think they might have finally stepped a bridge too far. They literally tried to rig it so bad that Donald Trump won again. He lost and then came back and won after like their whole January 6th thing and all that. Like, you couldn't possibly fuck this up more. So if there were ever an opening for certain things that used to be full-blown, fully in control of power, maybe losing 20%, which could be enough for someone like Candace Owens to slip through the back door, then now this era here would be the time. And I think They also, and here's the biggest reason. What'd you see all these fucking idiots saying on November 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th when they went on TV? What were they saying? All the progressive think tank leaders.
The race issue? I don't know.
No,
What are you talking?
they were saying, we need to do what the right did. We need to invest in our own Joe Rogan and our own Theo Vaughn and all that. And people who actually were paying attention here are like, oh my God, they haven't learned anything. They think they can throw money at the problem. The reason those guys exist, the reason they got so big is because they talked to the everyman. They did it from their fucking home. They weren't behind big studios that had a fuck ton of money. Maybe they were wealthy from other things like Joe Rogan, but they did it in a genuine way where people felt like they were at the table with them. It wasn't some fucking Morning Joe studio with 30 producers running around with fucking headsets on saying what they got to talk about before the next goddamn commercial break. There was none of that. It was fucking unfettered. So when they are saying we got to invest in our own left side, you have completely missed the point. And where did Candace Owens grow? Candace Owens grew out of that type of Rogan type media where it's just, I'm going to get on camera, I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and I control what I'm going to say. No one tells me what the fuck to say. I'm doing it. So someone like that, if she starts to pick up 2, 3, or 4 more issues that progressives can get behind, she could fill that lane.
So I will get back to the Candace Owens stuff, but the irony of the whole thing of left wanting and left saying that, oh, we need our own Joe Rogan. Well, you had one. He was Joe Rogan.
Right. Yeah.
And then you lost him. But not to sound like a fucking grad school nerd, my favorite essay is Marshall McLuhan's Medium is the Message. The thesis of that is the medium has as much effect on the content more than the content itself. So how people are saying stuff and the medium through which they're saying stuff vis-a-vis Joe Rogan, vis-a-vis Theo Vaughn, vis-a-vis, I don't know, Hassan Piker even, has more effect on how people perceive the content than what they are saying.
Can they see themselves there or can't they?
Correct. Do you see yourself, like, are you being talked to or are you being talked with?
Right.
So that's one of the biggest issue, which I don't think still, like, I mean, I've worked there, by the way. They, like, the broadcast industry realizes
they don't get it.
Neither does the Democratic consulting class, which is one of the biggest things, because they will try to manufacture someone like Joe, and they will always struggle with it because they're like, oh, maybe if we build a podcast set, I think that does it. It's like, no. It's also about how you talk. It's about what's your tonality. It's about who you are talking with.
Are you real or aren't you?
Yeah. Correct.
People can smell that.
And the biggest thing of the internet is that you cannot outsmart the combined IQ of the internet.
Nope.
No.
People will smell that so quickly if you're like disingenuous. I mean, you do this for a living, so you know what I'm talking about. But I still don't see, to push back, like there is a gateway for Candace in the Democratic Party, maybe in the progressive base, but I don't see that happening in the DNC per se.
How many? Can we pull up how many subscribers she has on YouTube? I think she's been on her own YouTube for a year now.
I want to say like 3.
Oh, she's huge.
I think she's at 4 or 5 now. Let's pull up a few things here because we're in 2025, so she's at 4.17. Now pull up her Instagram. Okay.
She was like 8, 6, 5.
5.7. Now pull up her Twitter. 6.8. Yeah.
She's huge.
So just across those 3, she's got an audience of over 16, 17 million people, and she's known as a brand across heavily, like actually well known, I'll bet, conservatively speaking, by another 40, 50 million people. Even though I do, as I already stated, I do agree that the DNC was far better at controlling things always than the RNC. The RNC was just kind of dumb and asleep at the wheel. At the time, in 2015, the RNC could not control Trump. He was too big for what they did. The DNC still could control Sanders, but Sanders was also coming from the political class. He was certainly an outsider, but he was a long-time Washington guy, part of the system. Here's how things are done, whatever. Trump was a fucking dynamite rolled into the middle, whether you liked him or not, rolled into the middle of the fucking place with the fuse already set that blew up. And someone like Candace Owens, it would take someone of a celebrity type. This is someone who now she knows how to take advantage of situations and run with certain people. She knows, all right, I'm going to go do content with the Tates now because that's what's hot. She knows, like, all right, Kanye's saying this shit at the Paris show a few years ago. I'm going to go hang with him. Like, she knows how to make herself injected into culture. And so, yes, I still think it's a slimmer chance. I still agree with you that there are powers that be that could hold her off from doing something like that. But I'm not saying this is going to happen. As I said, my confidence interval is low. I'm saying I see the pathway to how something like that would happen if the Democrats don't figure it the fuck out. Because the ways that they're trying to be like relatable to people now, making their TikToks and stuff, it's cringe. It's fake. Just like you said, like when you see someone talking, the media, like the Marshall McLuhan thing, when you see the medium through which they're saying something, there's something off. The average person can smell that. Whereas when you see Trump just like say whatever the fuck he wants to say, it could be the dumbest thing ever, but you're like, well, I know he actually thinks that's what he's saying. You know what I mean?
He's real.
It's real.
Yeah.
It's real. That's how you win an election with a video dropping a month before that says grab him by the pussy. Okay, yeah. That's how you win. Because people know, well, I've heard people talk like that too. I guess
he's a
one
New
of us.
Yorker, yeah, so let it pass.
Yeah, he's from the locker room talk, and people buy it. And he was a brilliant brander. Candace Owens is an incredible brander. She knows, it's not really a good, not crass way to say this. She knows how to fucking put her dick on the table and tell everyone what's up. Like she's got that's one thing that I would give her a compliment on. She has a fucking set of balls on her that most dudes could never dream of having. Not literally, but figuratively.
Given her proximity and what happened with all things Candace and Daily Wire, I think this is a really good opportunity to talk about the quote-unquote alternate right-wing media ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And the state of it. Because for the longest time, it kind of happened as a consequence of the liberal stronghold in media, where Fox News was the only quote-unquote alternate voice, which people had access to. But right now, there's a really well-established pipeline of all things right-wing content online.
Yes.
And one of their biggest quote-unquote, way of getting people to pay attention is that we are the alternate voice. Mm-hmm. We are what you will not get. Do you think that still holds true, given the fact? And I don't want to say like, oh, Daily Wire is too big, then that's why like they're just as good or as bad as the mainstream media. Because I don't think being big is like a barometer of whether or not you are mainstream or not. But to your point, you just said no. But I want to question, like, first of all, why no, and second of all, what do you think is the goal of that industry as of now?
You and I, let's start with the first part, and then if I can remember the second part, we'll come back, but you'll bring me back to it. You and I met through our mutual friend Tommy G a while back. Mm-hmm. And Tommy G and I were on the phone, I'll say recently, discussing this because, he's not in the podcasting lane, but he's in the documentarian and telling real stories lane.
Smart guy.
Fucking brilliant. And he's someone who is truly, truly independent, and I am too. And we are obsessed with never losing that about ourselves. And
just so we have the definitions right, I just want to define what independent means in this context, which means that you are not funded by anybody else. Anyone is not paying your bills vis-a-vis all of this. You are pulling your own weight through ads, through memberships.
Not just that. I'm going to take it a whole nother level. We are also not politically affiliated.
Correct. Your political affiliation. No one is telling editorial point.
That's the more important part. There are a lot of people who are calling themselves independent right now. Their actions have proven that they're not. Period.
Okay, we have defined what independent means. Now go back to Tom.
Independent means that if you are going to call yourself an independent journalist, you're a journalist, which means, I'm going to hold you to the standard that I hold myself. When I go down and I vote, which I vote fucking 4 blocks from here at Center City, for every position down to fucking dog catcher, I do my civic duty, I go in and I vote, and I write journalist abstain. There is no affiliation whatsoever. We know how pendulums of societies are. We know how things go. We know how a human being is going to have biases and is going to feel certain push and pulls and whatever. But I am going to maintain my ability to be able to call things like I see it with having no fucking skin in the game of the people that I call it about. And there are a lot of people right now who are still out there. Now, Daily Wire, by the way, is not one of them. Daily Wire says what they are. Yeah. They are a right-wing conservative block, and I will defend them on that. I know they've had a lot of issues over there with other stuff. Some of that seems indefensible, but I will defend guys like that on that type of thing. I will defend the Sean Ryans of the world and the Patrick Bet-Davids of the world because they're very clear about where they stand. But it's not to sit here and like call out everyone and whatever. I don't think that's what this is. I think we're in the middle of a cultural phenomenon right now. There are guys who have way bigger platforms than I do and way more things being thrown at them than I do. So who the fuck am I to say how I would handle all those things? But I think what Tommy and I were talking about is we got to be really fucking careful about how things look just as much as how they are. And do I think it's a great look that like a lot of independent media people are going to the inauguration? No, because I know that if, you know, fucking Anderson Cooper were standing right there next to Kamala Harris getting sworn in, he'd be getting drilled, and he deserved to be. Now, do I think that my guys are the same as that? No, I think Joe Rogan's great. I think Theo Vaughn's fucking great, right? I enjoy the Nelk guys, and they actually also kind of come at it from a very clear lens, by the way. But like the way things are going to be long-term and how things can be labeled is very, very, very important to me. And the whole independent media thing just was a major part, if not the most important part of the fucking presidential election cycle. So now that underdog status is a lot less underdog.
Yeah.
And there are more eyeballs on us than there are on the fucking mainstream media. And if we become the same things that mainstream media became, even if it's not as egregious or as bad or whatever, just how it can be marketed, we are going to lose people.
The cosmetics
and we're going to deserve to. So now to take it a little more towards exactly where you were going, let's even look at just the right-wing media ecosystem, though, of independent media, where it's supposed to be like people don't control what you say. You know, it's still just dudes talking in a studio.
You're the real deal.
Right. Now you look at Daily Wire, now you can criticize them because it's like now there's clearly people in back offices saying, all right, we're going to make a show that does this. We're going to have a hard stop at this time. And they talk in corporate speak, and suddenly they're controlling what the narratives are. And when people say things that they don't like, oh, you're out. That's a problem. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. That's a huge, huge problem. And, you know, if I were a liberal strategist or a conservative strategist right now involved in either one of the quote-unquote independent media worlds, meaning let's label this part of the level of independent media, meaning just something that's not one of the mainstream networks that's, you know, funded by a public company and things like that. It's more of a, you know, small brand type idea. Then I would be having a hard look in the mirror about the freedom I give the people on my platform to run their show and do what they want to do. If we're truly going to be independent, then everyone's got to say what they're going to say, and, you know, we'll deal with how the chips fall. The problem is the lawyers get involved, and I'll defend the lawyers here. It's just a shitty way that the system works. Their job is to find fucking risk everywhere and identify it and try to prevent that. And they're not thinking about like how this looks or what the cultural war is going to be. That's not how they think. They're thinking like, is this going to
risk mitigation?
Right.
That's what they're paid for.
Right. And so it's a complicated world, and I'm not going to sit here. I don't have the responsibilities that those places have. They're fucking huge.
Correct.
Right? So I'm very careful about throwing stones from glass houses, but like we do have to be careful in independent media about how things look.
To that point, I am so lucky that when I first moved to DC, Sagar became my mentor.
Yeah.
And everything that I know about journalism and media was through his lens because I was 20 years old. And Tucker used to be in the office, and Tucker taught us everything that I today know about what is actual anti-establishment way of thinking. And obviously Sagar became independent. He started his own show. And I observe very closely beyond his political take how he handles all these vibe shift, because he could have easily played the game of I'm a conservative media host and now I'm whatever. So he didn't do that. It's like, no, I'm a journalist. I'm a capital J fucking journalist.
I like that guy.
However, I lean this way because of what my temperament is and what my principles are. However, I'm going to act like a journalist. And there's a difference. And that needs to exist. I went to journalism school. People stop used to being proud of whatever. I genuinely like the fourth estate. And people who are in this vertical, and that expands to people like you, people who are actually doing their due diligence of covering the news and covering everything that's going on. And I think that having that principle matters. And to Tommy's point, cosmetics matter so fucking much.
Unfortunately, they do.
Because it's so easy to get lost in that, oh, we won this fight after 4 years of censorship and all of this and COVID and all of this. Like, now it's our time to win.
Right.
So it's kind of saying, like, fuck you to all things establishment culture and kind of basking in the glory of it by going to the White House and what have you. However, again, you're looking at the timeline in a super myopic way. things change overnight. And you want to tell your audience, when all of this was going on, even though I told this, and this, I was still doing my job.
That's correct.
It's the Bill Belichick code. Do your fucking job.
Do your job.
That's all that matters. And a lot, like, going back to, again, all this Candace stuff and Daily Wire stuff, it bothered me so much that even journalists or like podcast people were in there. It's like, okay, fine, you want to have fun, that's good, but I'm not getting my news from you. And that's where I draw the line. Because everybody's like, oh, do we need mainstream news now? Now that we are listening to Theo Von, now that we are listening to, I don't know, Sean Ryan, what have you. My point is, when something like 9/11 happens, when something like October 7 happens, I want to turn the TV on. I want to see what the fuck is going on. And that is the value prop of, let's call it mainstream media, what have you. Because at the end of the day, they are still the people who are going out there to aggregate the news.
Yes.
Right? Joe Rogan is not going to send like an Africa correspondent.
That's correct.
When war's breaking into Africa. So we still need those people who are doing reporting, and they need to be trained. And that's where like my defense of capital J journalism comes in, because I know what that system.
So how do we fix the system? You're saying, how do we make it better?
Correct. I am totally for the fact
agree.
that anyone who comes 100%. On TV after 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. who has commentary and who has takes, what have you, and that can be like someone like Laura Ingraham, that can be someone like Don Lemon, he's obviously independent now. Lemon. Anderson Cooper. I totally want that kind of content, which is commentary, parasocial content, to exist in your lane, because people trust you more.
Yeah.
So that's fine. But I still want people to do the news.
Yes.
And those people should never go to the White House, no matter who is in there.
Yes. And I don't want to be, again, I don't want to throw stones from glass houses, because I mean, I'm a small potato. I didn't have opportunities like that. Who knows how I handle it when I do. I would like to think that I would have maintained the independence of being like, all right, how this looks is going to outweigh how this actually is, because like I'm obviously a very flawed guy. I make a lot of mistakes, and you know, there's things that have happened behind the scenes where if I had made other decisions, we'd be a lot bigger and more successful than we are, but I made the wrong calls, and I got to live with that. But if there's one thing I am betting on myself.
Julian, pause. That's why I respect you, because you could have, anyone can grift their way to fame today. And the game is so mathematical to play. It's so fucking obvious.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get that level?
Side.
It is so fucking easy to play the grift game. It takes chutzpah to actually stick to what you want to stick to. And that is one of the reasons I respect what you do. I respect what Tommy does. And I think long game matters in that case.
I do too. And I appreciate you saying that, because the one thing I would like to think when we're sitting here 15 years from now and looking back on hopefully more success than failure that I will have gotten right is I have always looked at things 10 years out. How does this play 10 years out? And that's not to be calculated or change what I say or change my opinions to match anything. It's more to say, where am I reacting to the emotion of the moment versus the logic of the long term? And I'm an emotional guy first. I got to check that at the door. I mean, you can fucking see it if you run this podcast back. I'm getting a little emotional and stuff. And that's okay. But when that is driving all of your actions and how you build your show and build your quote unquote platform, then you're going to run into problems. And so I am constantly like, I wish we didn't have to worry about how things looked, to be frank, because I don't think that, like personally on a human to human level, I don't think that should matter. But I realize I can't fight City Hall. That is how the world works. How things can be spun and how they can look do matter. So I think about those things, and I try to be careful and measured in how you know, I'll handle some of those doors as they open. And I think sometimes, you know, like you said, and I really do appreciate you saying that, I could be very wealthy right now. It would have been very easy. I could have just picked a side on some issues and fucking done my thing. You know how I can do a video, turn the camera around and do my thing. But I've never done that because that's not me and that's not how I feel. And I believe that even if the things that get clicks in the short term are the extremes and are the most crazy opinions, I believe there are a lot more rational people out there than we give credit for in society, who look at things with nuance. And I think that over time they will continue to find me, and at some point we will cross that escape velocity point to where people are like, you know what, I don't always agree with Julian, which I hope to God you don't always agree with me, by the way. That would be a problem if you did. But there's just a level of like real actual conversation that happens on his show, and I can judge how I want to judge and move the fuck on with my life afterwards. If people are saying that 5 years from now and we're building an audience like crazy, then I'll know I've done my job the right way.
Let's go back to the White House real quick, because I'm super interested.
I never been.
It's not that glamorous. First of all, anyone can go there. Like my parents did. Couple of days ago, you can just like go talk to your embassy, and you can just
walk in.
You have to get the tickets, and like
You
have to pass clearance.
I've ran in and they were like, "Whoa!"
You have to pass clearance, so they'll definitely look at your videos.
That might be an issue.
Yeah, so you have to pass clearance. So
don't give me the rip. don't do that.
DC is such like I don't know, like people who haven't been into like the Capitol Hill area, they think like it's a glamorous world.
Yeah.
It's not.
No, it's not.
It's so unromantic.
Yeah.
I've spent like a decade there. It's just so.
I never thought it was, to be clear.
Yeah, no, me neither.
You know, like when you come, like when you're in middle school, high school, whatever, you do the little Capitol Hill tour and you see all these shiny things, and I totally get the glamour of it. But once you live there and once you spend your entire life there, you kind of see the facade of it, and it goes away so quickly. But I want to go to the right-wing coalition right now, and the first time we saw a fracture in there was during the immigration debate during Christmas, which is, I mean, let's call it the Bannon right, and let's call it the Elon Musk right, what have you. How long do you think this lasts? Do you think it's going to be like a happy marriage or an ugly divorce? Because post Wisconsin, Elon looked pretty embarrassing. And right now, the reason I want to talk about it, because like the average Trump voter, in my opinion, not the average, the median Trump voter is a Bannon guy, right? However, from the cosmetics of it, Trumpism is like a campaign, is like a coalition of Mark Andreessen, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, and all these people who are much less risque than the Bannon faction. So my question is, long term, how do you see this playing out? Because as of now, they did needed a wide tent to win the election.
Yes.
However, now that you have won the election, who has the steering wheel?
What do you think of this? Because this you were talking about this you were talking about this last week.
And what's
with
that?
with the whole Elon thing. Do you think that this blows up?
I mean, I definitely have got a bad taste in my mouth with him recently.
With Elon?
Yeah, it's
Why?
just cringy.
What is?
Well, you know, no one wants a guy. He can't be in government because of all of his businesses. However, he's going to be cashing in on all the government contracts, and he's kind of just parading around town like a dunce, honestly. So I'm concerned because the moment they butt heads, it's going to look bad, because in the past, you'd have politicians. I'll pull it back. It's very unprecedented because in the past, whether it was a monarchy, whether it was, sitting presidents, you could buy power through people and you can have people in your pocket. But for the first time ever, we're going to see a stage being set where Elon Musk is going to be this high-level bureaucrat who's not going to just be in the pockets of people. He's going to own the actual infrastructure of what our future is about to be built on. And that's what worries me, is because the moment they butt heads, and we're seeing it happen already, what does that look like?
Yeah, I worry about that too, because it's like you want to think the best. You want to think Elon wants all the best things. Like, I, for one, love the concept of Doge. I think it's incredible. Like, oh my God, going in and trying to clean up government waste, amazing.
Yeah.
I think you cut your balls off when you then, still kind of like right-wing meme troll on the platform that you own.
Yeah, it's based. Everything's so
claiming
based.
to do this.
It is so icky.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my God.
And like, I've had this line for years. You and I had this line in fucking episode 132 when we were recording 3 years ago, and I've had it since the very beginning. It's like, I'm a fan of Elon.
Yeah.
I love him trying to get us to Mars. I think rockets are cool as shit. I think like building sustainable cars is cool as shit. But I'm not a fanboy of anybody,
No.
let alone him. Meaning, I am not going to sit here and guzzle his fucking balls every time he says something because, oh, that's the cool tech bro saying this thing, right? I'm going to look at things the same way I look at everything else when someone else says something objectively. And I'm going to say, okay, it doesn't mean he's all wrong about something, but it also doesn't mean he's all right about something. So like I can look at something like Doge and say, love that idea. Don't love the optics of one of Trump's biggest funders running this, who, you know, is also getting, as Joe points out, huge government contracts and he's a human being, right? So if you really want to hit the left on something, they deserve to be hit on this. They had Elon Musk.
Oh yeah.
And they pushed him the fuck away.
Yeah.
And they deserve a fuck ton of blame on that because he tried to be reasonable for a long time. And as a human being who got punched over and over again, he finally got punched enough that he started punching hard back. And what happens as human beings goes right back to that equal but opposite reaction.
Yeah.
When we start punching back, it's a good feeling. I don't know if you've ever done it, but like it's a very good feeling when you do that and you start to say, I want to do that some more. You know, yeah, I might buy this platform here, and then I can punch back on this platform. And then it gets harder and harder and harder, and then you get skin in the game. Now he funded the incoming president and everything, and things start to get foggy. And one of the things I would love to, if I ever met Joe Rogan, ask him about off camera, not on camera, just off camera, is to try to understand what it's like to be so tied to someone like that. Because here you have the richest guy in America, Elon Musk, who, as I already stated, does some really cool things and is an interesting guy, who has the biggest modern media moment in history on Joe Rogan's platform in September 2018. That Joe Rogan was the biggest podcaster already at that point, and he was big. That took Joe Rogan from like a governor to a president. I mean, he went stratospheric overnight. And so they are tied together, and they became very good friends through that. And then Elon, to his credit, had some really good takes as the pandemic was. He was one of the first guys to come out because he was funding, you know, some of these fucking, what were they called? The
gubernatorial races?
No, the machines that people breathe on. No, the things that people breathe. Why can't I think of it?
Yeah, what the?
We already forgot.
The fucking
the breath, the lung,
the
machine.
breathalyzer?
Not the breath. No, they put him on the
thing for the test.
Life support. Whatever
Ventilators?
Ventilators, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he was one of the first guys coming out because he was funding the ventilators, saying, yo, this is actually killing people.
Yeah.
Right? And he got hit for that, you know? And so he had good takes on stuff. And then we all know what the machine tried to do to Joe Rogan, where he was much more right than they were. I'm not saying he was 100% right, but fuck, he was at least 80% right.
Yeah.
You know? And they attacked him like with lies and smears over and over and over again and tried to tell people what he was. They changed the color of his skin on CNN to try to make it seem like he was more sick than he was. Like, it was really sadistic shit. So during this whole time, he's also developing that friendship, and he and Elon are continuing to bond over things that they are objectively at least mostly correct about, if not all the way correct on certain issues. And then it translates into a presidential election where a bunch of shit happens. The fucking guy almost gets killed on the campaign trail. And then in the moment, that's when Elon endorsed him publicly, right after he got shot. You're emotional during that time. We were all like, wow, that's crazy. And objectively speaking, it was a badass moment from Trump. It's one of the wildest moments I've ever seen. God. I get goosebumps to this day.
Goosebumps. I know exactly where I was.
Yeah. Like when I watch it, you can't fake how he responded to that. That motherfucker was about it. You know what I mean? And that's a really, really cool thing. I will never take that from him. But, you know, now all these things have and it's like the train was going down the rails, getting faster and 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 just keeps going all the way into an election, to the point that the day before the election, Elon Musk is coming on for 3 hours screaming, we're never going to have an election again if Trump doesn't win, and then really getting Joe to endorse him on his own platform.
Yeah.
By the way, I mean, that was a real thing. Joe put out a tweet. I don't have it in front of me, but Joe put out a tweet when he put out that podcast on X that night before the election, where he said, you know, Elon makes what I believe is the strongest case yet for Trump, and I'm with him all the way. Enjoy the podcast. And 20 minutes later, it was edited. And Joe explained later why it was edited. It's because Elon called him and said, you must say you're endorsing Trump. You didn't say it explicitly. Say it. So then the tweet became, Elon makes what I believe is the strongest case yet for Trump, and I'm with him all the way. And to be clear, yes, that is an endorsement of President Trump. Now you have the owner of a platform, the richest guy in America, going on the biggest podcast platform in the world the day before the election to make his case, which he's allowed to do. I'm not blaming that. And then basically pressuring his friend to say something that Joe's never done that, as far as I know. He's never, like, he kind of endorsed Bernie Sanders during a primary, but Bernie was never going to win, and it was like a halfway endorsement in the middle of a podcast conversation. He's never, like, come out and done that explicitly. And Joe's in a position where, like, do you have to say yes to that? And also, like, he happens to agree with a lot of things, righteously so. I understand, like, what's going on and things that happen to him that, you know, Trump more aligns with. And Kamala wouldn't even fucking come talk to him in his studio. I mean, that was insane that she wouldn't do that. So I see all these things, but it's like the pressure builds over and over again to the point that now, you know, Elon just went on his show again a month and a half ago, and I don't envy the position Joe is in. And I think it's really tough to criticize him because it's like, well, that's his friend. They've been through a lot. Like, he's trying to clean up the government. I appreciate that. Like, would I challenge him? I don't know. But then when people come at Joe and say, why the fuck are you just letting him say whatever he wants to say? I understand where those people come from. It's just a really difficult spot to be in, and anyone who says they know how they would handle that is full of shit, including me. I don't know how I would handle that.
So there were a lot of people who used to criticize. There were a lot of people on the right who used to criticize the revolving door of mainstream news, which is someone like Jen Psaki can lead the government and then get an MSNBC gig right away.
Yes.
Compare that ecosystem to, you know, Elon Musk, proximity to Joe, already is in the government, can now also go to Joe anytime he wants to and make his case. And I think people are doing a disservice to their own IQ if they don't realize that these are the exact same thing.
So did you see this podcast Joe did with Ben Lamb, the colossal sciences guy?
No.
Okay, I haven't seen it, but that is a podcast we've been working on for 18 months now. It's either Ben or Matt, one of the two guys. They were each scheduled like one time, and we couldn't line up the schedules, and we're still trying to get it done. But they're, for people that need context, they're the de-extinction science company. So they just recently brought back a genetically modified version of dire wolves. It's not a real full dire wolf, but it was kind of marketed that way. But it's interesting, right? And I'm very interested in what they're doing. So I've had a friendly disagreement with my friend Paul Rosolie over the past couple of years about it, because he's a pure conservation guy. He's lived down the Amazon for 19 years. He's been screaming, trying to save that fucking place. I've been down there. I've seen the work he does. He's amazing. And he has, I would be uneducated to lay out his concerns exactly as he would want them laid out. He'll do that in the future on a podcast. But he has concerns about Colossal and some of the hurt he thinks they may be doing towards conservation, for example. So he laid those out publicly. He and I were talking about it too. And so he called me and went on like an 11-minute rant that I wish we had recorded, because it was, I want you to picture if like Dave Smith were alive while Vietnam were going on.
That's
and that
so
is
funny.
about like the level. It was biblical. And I was just sitting there laughing the whole time. But he said something in there that was so profoundly perfect, and I'm not going to get the wording right, but it's real. It's a really important point.
Yeah.
Where he was, because again, like, he's friends with Joe Rogan, and obviously Joe put this guy into the stratosphere, and hey, I'm going to fucking bring these guys on too. So it's not like he shouldn't do that or something. He just happens to have a different opinion. And so the way he's looking at this, he said, we've created this ecosystem now that has a lot of positive to it, but it's like you can bring people in for a long form conversation, and they can be a real human being for a few hours, and you can want to get along with them, and they get along with you, and they put things in a really nice way where they can sound like a nice guy and even sound like they have good intentions, and maybe even sometimes they do have good intentions. But when they come through the door, we're in the studio, Nico. But when they do actually come down to it, you know, some of them actually don't have good intentions and are just painting it like they do. And people that are listening to them at the table, like me, like you telling me, like, you need to look out for this kind of thing because you're part of this ecosystem. You can make this mistake. You may want to see the best in this person because just as a human, you want to get along with them. And they sound like they're saying something so interesting to the point that you then, let's say they're a good guy, not a bad guy. You misappropriate their intentions with what the actions, with the consequences of their actions. And that's what he thinks happened with Colossal. He thinks that's what's happening here. I'm not saying he's right about that, but I'm saying He thinks that's what's happening.
Don't you think
And
people should be judged on the consequences and not their intentions?
100%.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I think that mistake exists across the board, across all different
That's just
issues,
being
across
human beings, yeah.
podcasting. I think I'm guilty of it too, with people that, of course, with people that I've had in here who just, that maybe they really actually don't have bad intentions. Their intentions are good. Like, they're not just a bad person, which those people do get through the cracks as well. But it's like, what can actually support that? Are you just making this sound like it's a friendly way for you to give me bad evidence, or are you giving me evidence that can actually move the needle here? I know that's a convoluted way of putting it. I hope people can understand what I'm trying to get at there. But I think that is also an issue when you're friends with a genius. Elon Musk is a genius who says a lot of genius shit. You can operate. I know I would be in the trap of operating under the assumption that everything he fucking says is genius, and because he's saying it, it must be right. But now, am I doing my job if I'm sitting there with that opinion? Maybe not. But again, it's a really tough spot to be in, and I don't know how I would handle that because they have an incredible friendship and long history.
I have a couple of them for you. What's your heart out? How long do you got?
No, we got time. Come on in, Nico. We're good. You good. My boy Nico's rolling through. We're still on camera.
I'm gonna go pee real quick.
You want to pee real quick?
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Let's do that.
All right. We talked about a lot of funky shit, but let's talk about some fun stuff. Vis-a-vis bullshit.
We haven't talked about fun shit yet?
No.
I've been getting worked up,
let's talk about the current state of our gender dynamics in America.
I'm gonna hand this off to Joey Deef.
Yeah. So something which I've been like super fascinated with is the rise of the trad wife movement.
Oh, the traditional wife.
Yeah. So just a refresher: trad wife is traditional wife, which basically means that we need to return to before all this corporate movement. What
goddamn right? Get back in the kitchen.
So that whole like men used to say that. Now there's a whole lane of TikTok commentary which is like, hey, I actually just want to be like a Pilates mom and live that easy life, what have you. And it's funny to talk about it because when I was coming of age, the rise of what I call like BuzzFeed feminism was coming into place, which is, like the Amy Schumer type of commentary, which is women need to dominate in the workplace and what have you. I come from a family where my mom made more money than my dad, so I'm super empathetic to
in India.
Because she was splitting time between India and UK, but she ran like a teaching business and she was pretty successful in that. So I know what a successful working woman can look like. However, I think right now tracking this rise of trad wife movement, while at the same time, most people who are graduating out of school are women. Most people who work in like the 9-to-5 corporate structure are women making more money than men are, not at the top level, but in an average median way. So where do you think this goes? Where there's like this whole yearning energy of women saying that maybe all of this is like not worth it.
Yeah.
While at the same time, the capital C culture is telling you that no, you can do exactly what dudes are doing.
All right, this is dangerous.
I know, I love
dangerous
that.
little road you're taking me down. So let me layer this one. Number one, I think people should have a choice to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
I don't think there should be set roles of like, this is what we do in this society. If you're a woman, this is what we do in society if you're a man. That said, there are certain things that statistically women are going to lean more towards and men are going to lean more towards. You make a really good point about there being more college graduates that are women or obviously like just mathematically. There's more of them doing that. I do think in society we have started to sell women a lie though. What I mean by that is not that women shouldn't be CEO or that women shouldn't strive to eventually be a woman president, right? I think those are great things. But I think we've sold to women that this social plan I talked about the last time I was on with you is also for them too. So let's review that for people that haven't figured that out. You know, you have this
the
thing,
social contract. Yeah.
You have this thing. I'm very passionate about this, but you have this thing where you're a kid and you're told, all right, go get decent grades, work hard in school. By the way, have your extracurriculars, you know, be good at a sport. You could stick it on a fucking resume, get that GPA in college. So you're set up junior year, you take your SAT classes, make sure you get at least, you know, 1250 or whatever. You get into a decent school so that your fucking parents can throw you a graduation party and tell all your friends you're not fucking retarded. Then you go to college, you go there, you drink, smoke, and fuck, but you get your work done, you have a decent GPA, and you start doing those internships when you're a sophomore and junior in college, and then boom, you come out and you go into a respectable industry to get a respectable job so you can start making money. And this is something that men were always so, because it's like, okay, we come out, we do that.
This is like our default settings.
Right. And then we start to find the girl maybe at 25, 26, 27, but we're working our ass off. We get married at 29, 30. We start popping out kids at 32. Maybe we're a VP of some fucking marketing or whatever it is now. We're making $120K a year in New York. That's enough to fucking walk my dog, take a piss, and clean it up with, you know, whatever.
Nail to the team.
But I'm saying,
like, this is my second time listening to this shit.
Then it keeps going through, and as you get up through your 30s, you're popping out more kids. Now you're setting up fucking, what is it, 501c3s or 529, whatever the fuck it's called. I'm not in finance anymore. You set up that stuff so that they can save for college, which, by the way, by the time they get there, there's going to be twice as many people graduating from college. The degree's watered down, and it's going to cost 3 times as much for you to be able to be told that there's no such thing as fucking two genders. And then you're in your early 40s. Now you don't like your wife anymore. You fucking are fighting with her all the time. So you go play golf on fucking Saturday mornings to get away from her. Maybe Tuesday afternoons too, if you're high enough up in your company. And eventually along the way, you're saving your 401k so that you can look at that fucking 65. I'm out. 65. I'm out. 65. I go buy my condo in Florida. I go down there. I stop being productive. Maybe I take a walk in the morning to feel important or feel like I'm actually getting exercise. I look at the sun and I wait to die. This was something that was sold to men since World War II. It also along the way started being sold to women to the point that they are trying to automatically default, be the breadwinner and go be the corporate girl and whatever. And maybe that's not what they want. Maybe they actually do want more the most important job there is in the world, which is to be a mom. Like, I'm sitting here, and by the way, I have both worlds with this, so I can really speak on this. My mom, who's my hero, had, I don't know, 15 or 16 miscarriages, and she ended up with me, which was a fucking handful. Like, that was the blessing and the curse, if you will. But she had a very prestigious public school teaching job in a major league, huge district, was making bank. And she left that behind at the drop of a hat to raise me. And I remember when I was 3 years old and went into like my first little preschool or whatever, she decided to take a part-time back with that. And she lasted about 3 weeks because she wanted to be home to raise me. So she did that and devoted her life to me, which I owe her for into perpetuity. And then when I was 10, she decided, you know what? While he's away at school during the day, I can fill that time up and I can do things. And she did awesome things. She became a personal trainer. She ended up owning a gym and selling it. She went back to her roots, became a college professor at the local community college because she could teach classes at 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock and pick me up from school. You know, so she was able to live those worlds and do the entrepreneurial thing as well and have her own personal training business, but be a mom. And that was the most fulfilling thing that she ever did. And I think there are a lot of women out there who can absolutely do both and become the CEO and also be an amazing mom too. And like, you know, maybe they even went to an Ivy League or something. So they've really invested in this. But there's a lot of women whose, you know, secret dream is actually to be an amazing mom and depend on the man to go out there and make the fucking money and fund the most important job there is, which is raising our kids and having her have the time to do that. And like, whoever my future wife is, whoever she's going to be, she's going to get to decide whatever she wants to do. I'm not one of these guys, these fucking chauvinists that's going to tell her how to live or what to do with her life.
Like him?
But yeah, like Joe. Exactly. But what I'm saying is, I will definitely be very happy if I marry a girl who's like, hey, you know, we're going to be having kids. I hope to have a lot of kids. And I want to stay home and raise them. I'm going to be like, fucking A, please do that. And I will take care of the rest. Because that's why I've worked so hard to do what I do right now, so that we can have that luxury. And also maybe come up in a world where our kids don't have to just follow those plans. You know, this is separate from what you're saying, but another thing that's very important to me. I mean, you see me like, I don't go buy Gucci this and Versace that, right? Like I'm a very simple guy. And like I don't want my kids, obviously if this is going to keep going on the trajectory it does, it's like I have success. I don't want my kids to know that. I don't want to live in a fucking 12-bedroom house and have fucking 3 houses in other places. I want my kids to grow up to be dogs. Right? I want them to grow up and form their own way. When we had Redman in here and he started talking about all his kids and all the different shit they're doing that's completely away from what he did, I thought that was amazing. Because Redman never switched up, bro. He didn't give a fuck. MTV Cribs came to him and said, hey, we'll give you a house to rent so it can look more important. He's like, fuck that. Come to my 2-bedroom and see my dollar box in the kitchen, bitch. Like he didn't, I love that, man. Maybe that's why we got along. But like, I'm going to need a wife that like, it's not like, we're going to sit there and be poor, but everything, but that understands like we're going to try to instill those types of values in our kids. And it's about what we have with each other rather than what we have in the bank.
Going back to the trad wife part of it, I think like there was a key part where he said, my wife can do that if she wants to, right? The issue with the whole trad wife culture is that a lot of women do want to do that, but because of all things affordability crisis and not to get too macro, like neoliberalism in general, most families cannot afford that. So
That's right.
Not because of their choice, there are 2 people working. That's right. And that results not only in the woman not actually doing what she wants to, but also in the kid doesn't have to, like the mom and the dad in the house.
Yeah.
So there's like a cascading effect which goes beyond the trad wife culture or what have you. So
it's a luxury you're saying, and I agree.
It is a luxury. It's 100% a luxury.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just like you, when I was born, my mom wanted to just be a mom, even though she was a teacher and she was making okay money. But my dad was like, okay, we need the money. I totally get it, because he was also going through a lawsuit. But my mom was like, I want to, help you out. But my dad was like, no, be a mom because I know you want to do this. And that arguably had the biggest effect in like my upbringing.
Yes.
Right? We luckily got over that situation. My mom ended up opening her own business, super successful. But the point being, the fact that she felt uncomfortable leaving me at a creche or like, like a child caretaker or whatever, that had such a long-lasting impact on my upbringing.
Yes.
For a lot of families, that is probably not the case.
Correct.
So I think we can keep talking about trad wives and culture wars or what have you, but because of economic realities, most families can't afford that.
Yeah, let's step into that for a minute, because that's the 500-pound elephant in the room. We have legislated away the middle class.
Oh, yeah.
And we've created people where they're living literally paycheck to paycheck. And the respect I have for the moms who work 3 jobs while their kids are forced to be more independent on things that ideally they wouldn't be independent on at maybe the age they're at is tremendous, because those moms are in a horrible spot, and the dads are out there working hard too when they're around. And I'm not talking about situations where it's like there's a single mom or single dad. I'm talking where there's both even, and they're both working. But what I also don't think should happen is like the I want that Ferrari effect of society.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the trad wife stuff is attacked because they're like, you have the luxury of having that. And there's a part of me that says, we used to live in this world. I remember John Bork talked about this in episode 57 with me, but he's like, when I was growing up, you'd pull up next to the guy in the Ferrari at the light and you'd say, damn, I wonder what he had to do to get that. I want to do that too. He said, now these fucking kids pull up and they say, I should have that too. Right? And so you don't want to just attack women who may have the luxury of being a trad wife strictly because they have the luxury of having that. You also don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and ignore the problem that you very righteously raise a hand, which is that it is not an economic opportunity for a lot of people. Partially also because we've sold everyone the lie that every fucking person has to go to college for 70 grand a year to get a gender studies degree. Like what, Nico, do you use your college degree every day?
People ask me that all the time, but
Can we pull the mic to Nico? Yeah.
People ask me that all the time. I honestly believe I do use my college degree just in the facet of learning how to mature as an individual and hold myself accountable to goals that I want to achieve.
So the pushback to that is you use your college skills, not the degree necessarily.
Yeah, and then if you want to dig into the degree, I did do marketing, so I believe and lean into the newer things I learned as far as like in your marketing degree. My school was like super niche, you know? So we learned a lot of like social media techniques and things like that that I just try to implement into my entrepreneurial side of stuff. Like, because my dad, when we run the bagel store, we clash on that all the time.
Best bagel store in Hoboken, by the way.
Nice.
Bagels on the Hudson.
Yeah, so like just the other night, like we were clashing about he's doing he has a big deal coming up, so he has the opportunity to maybe have extra cash to spend on things. And coming up in the marketing degree, you learn a lot about like different channels to market to people in different ways that capture new sales. We're going to need to capture new sales. Mm-hmm. Our brand, compared to the other bagel store in town, is not similar on an online presence, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm pitching to my dad like, hey, we should invest a little bit of money and try to get this social media thing going. Obviously, his brain is so old school.
I'll work on him.
You know what I mean? And like, he never went to school. He never got a degree, nothing like that. He learned the bagel business by sitting in the store for 365 days a year, and traditional ways of marketing that were pitched to him by the people who came in the store and pitched, hey, put your ad in the newspaper, do this, do that. Me, I actually learned something. And I'm not like, that's why I say I use it. Not only in the bagel business, in my real estate business as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into detail, but
But that's
too,
not the majority of people.
Here's the thing. Yeah. I too also feel like I use my degree. I have no complaints about my college degree. I went to school for, the major was called global management, which sounds way more important than it was, but it was business school, right? And I use it all the fucking time. But I also know people that, even some that went to my school, who, like, Nico, what was your major over there?
Marketing, business marketing.
Exactly. So he's putting that to work within business. I'm an entrepreneur as well. I'm putting it to work within business in what I do, and then the other things are you learn along the way. College didn't teach you. But I know a lot of people who are really smart who got like a poli-sci degree.
Most people
even like a normal degree.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do I like, even the ones who will go down and work in DC and work at think tanks, they're like, do I really use a lot of what I learned there? You know what I mean? So it's not that I don't want to demonize college. I think that's a huge mistake we're making, because now the reaction is we need to cancel it. It's all bullshit. It's all Marxist. That's not the case at all. I didn't have that experience at all. But like that healthy middle ground of like, all right, well, maybe this kid wants to own a contracting company, so college isn't for him. Trade school is for him. Yeah. And by the way, he's going to be fucking driving around a Bentley when he's
more
money
40. Than accountant, maybe. Yeah, whatever.
That's right. So it's like, but you also need college for engineers and lawyers and doctors and all this shit. So it's very important. But we've watered it down so much, and we've put these expectations on it, and we tell these kids, you know, when they're fucking 17 years old, to sign their name to a loan, and they don't even know how money works. It's like the system's set up to fail. Exactly. The system is set up to fail. And I think we got to reckon with that sooner rather than later.
What do you think happens to, like, how old are you?
32.
32. I'm 29. What do you think happens to, like, the COVID generation of kids? Because
that's a great question.
I asked Sagar why he got into journalism and news. For him, it was 9/11. I was too young to remember 9/11, but for me, it was all things 2016, which is Trump circa first election.
Is that when you immigrated too?
No, I moved to the UK when I was 16 or 17, and then I moved to the States when I was 20.
So what, like 2014, 2013, something like that?
In the States?
Yeah.
2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So, but long story long, I still remember my first day I got out of Dulles in DC, and all the Kavanaugh protesters was going on. And I was an intern at the college.
I like beer.
Good, great timeline. But then I got to the office. I got an internship at Tucker Carlson's blog, which was Daily Caller. And in my first day in the States, I met Tucker, and Tucker was like, "Don't judge us. We are not like this," because he was referring to everybody outside. But then we met again, like literally like 4 months later, when things were even more chaotic, and he was like, "You know what? Judge us." And like that was like my orientation in all things American journalism and like news in general. But my question is, I think about like the next generation who kind of came of age during COVID and everything that was happening during then, and that whole tragedy defined their upbringing. And when they were kids, they probably faced the consequence of their dads and
Yes.
moms losing their jobs during 2008.
Yes.
And everything that happened during 9/11, what have you. So what do you think their like approach to America is and how they look at the country in general? Because I'm guessing you are probably taught to look at America in a way different way than these
Yeah.
people are going to be.
Yeah, I not even looking at America. I think we got to go a layer below that. What long-term downstream effects does it have that kids weren't in school and interacting for 2 years? I don't care if it was kindergarten first graders or third grader fourth graders or seventh grader eighth graders or 11th grader 12th graders. There is a social understanding and a social learning environment and also a quality of learning environment that we already talked about earlier is suffering in this country that was taken from them. And there are interpersonal skills that have been lost. I think it's beyond that too. I think you got to look at adults. Like listen, when COVID hit, I was building this thing. And my job was to be social with people during the week because I'm fucking talking with them on camera. But I lived on a fucking island. I worked all day. I mean, I still do, but like I was literally at my parents' house, in Bumblefuck, South Jersey, living in a dark studio like this and editing all night. So I'm away from the world. I'm away from how a lot of things work. And I remember when
Do you miss that time?
No. I remember. Well, there are fond memories.
I know how much you romanticize the grind. That's what I'm asking.
I romanticize it in the sense that there are fond memories of how things happen, and that would be a fucking 12-hour conversation. Yeah. We started that, but I don't miss being sickly and unhealthy. Like I was able to take care of my health when I got up here, get back. I mean, it got to a really bad place physically and mentally by the end of that. But I remember coming back. The one thing I could still do is like have interpersonal communication on a basic level with people. But to this day, when I walk down the street, people look down. You feel weird if you say hello, and it affects me. I'm empathic with people, and I take on people's emotions. So when people do things like that, like look away from me or whatever, I shut down. I don't even know how to handle it. But what I'm realizing is that that's a societal wide thing, and it's this like expectation where people got separated from each other. So now they're also like, I don't want to say they're suspicious of everyone.
They're siloed.
But yes, that's the perfect way to put it. They're very siloed, and I think that the downstream effects of that are already bad on society. I think you could even look at it with dating, where everyone's just relying on fucking flipping this way. And when you go to do things in person, you're worried about how they're going to come across. You're worried like, all right, well, if I get rejected, is she going to think I'm fucking creepy just for asking? Like, these are not questions I thought about in 2019. Thank God. 2019 was a good year.
Good year.
But you know what I mean? It's like society has changed even at an adult level. What do you think it's going to do to kids?
Right? Not just that. My question is, how do they look at America in general?
How they look
and the promise of it. Because I like to take myself out of the equation because I have a different lived experience. I'm comparing them.
It's very progressive.
I know, right? Yeah. But that's what fucking journalism school does to you. But I try to compare that to like how their parents viewed this country.
Yes.
And the promise of it, because like they came of age, they being their parents, came of age during the Roaring 20s. And that whole culture, not culture, by culture, I mean like outlook and the promise of America is so different that the nihilism their kids grew up in.
Did you ever meet anyone in the silent generation, meaning people that were born before 1941, 42?
How old they would be now?
They would be like fossils. 90,
so no.
95. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm still lucky to have 3 of my grandparents. They're all from that generation. They were born in 1933 to 1935, the ones that are left. And my grandma, to this day, little 4'11" Italian lady, she's not missing any meals. They're doing just fine. My grandpa was a doctor. Like, they lived the American dream. But she still writes down how much a fucking orange costs and shit. She puts signs on every light in the house that says turn off when done. Yeah. There's a sign on the shower down the shore that like limit it to 9 minutes of water. And I'm like, lady, I used to manage your money on Wall Street. You're fine. Yeah. But that's built into her from the Depression era, because the silent generation was the artist generation of the 4 generations in the fourth turning, which I'm not going to explain all right now. But what we are talking about with the current generation, the COVID generation and Gen Z that came up in this time of just like financial crisis, fucking, political infighting, social media making everyone fucking miserable and want to kill themselves. All these things that are happening, they are a part of that generation that grows up during the fucking crisis moment. And as a result, they are very guarded about the world. They are very like, all right, what could go wrong? They're more protective of things. And I think that is going to be something we see moving forward, because if you've read The Fourth Turning, we have seen this cycle happen now several times over and over.
Closing.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, and it's so important because your outlook to America could be either that of abundance or that of scarcity. Because you can look at America and be like, oh, it's an empty canvas and I can build whatever I want to build. Or you can look at America and be like, I saw my dad lose his job. I saw what that did to our house in general. And I came of age during COVID, where you cannot get a job, you're stuck in your house. And after that, there is all of this political turmoil going on where we cannot agree on the basic stuff. Oh, and by the way, I have college debt.
Yeah.
So what that does to like a kid's brain coming of age, that's where my concern is. And I don't blame them for not being patriotic, by the way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. I think I think you have to. It's not to say you got to celebrate how people look at things, but you have to understand why they look at them that way. And that's how I'm going to look at that generation. And, that's kind of what it is.
I need something positive to end on.
Okay.
So obviously, how long are you going to keep this atrocity on top of your head?
Until we get 1 million subscribers, I publicly committed to it.
Okay.
My mom rips me about it every day. It is an atrocity. I don't have that. You're not rocking the flow today. I appreciate you not showing me up.
It's raining outside. Got to put this on. So.
Oh, you got the product in your hair.
Yeah.
This kid's got amazing flow. But yeah, it's not great. It's definitely hard to take care of at this point. A little unkempt. But this is my gym hair too, so it's a little worse than usual. But
when you look back on this phase of your building, how do you think you will look at it? Because you told me like you don't look fondly upon that time during COVID.
It's not that I don't look fondly upon it. I don't miss it.
You don't miss it. But that kind of sort of like did kind of mold to what you are today, though.
It did.
Yeah.
I don't regret a second of it, and I worked my fucking dick off during those years, and I've continued to do that. We're over 5 years in now, me being 7 days a week. It can't be like that forever, but I know this is my moment to do what I got to do and to take that big step into the stratosphere, and I intend to do that. And when I'm done, whenever that is, hopefully a long time from now, I intend to be for a long time undisputed #1 in the world at what I do. And that has been the goal since day one, and that's the only way this will end.
Julian Dorey, thank you.
Thanks, Saga. I appreciate you, bro. All right, fellas.